I'm so excited to welcome Dan Martell, an entrepreneur, angel investor, thought leader, and highly sought after coach of the SaaS or software as a service industry. He founded, scaled, and successfully exited 3 technology companies within a 10-year period. In 2012, he was named Canada's top angel investor, having invested in more than 50 startups, such as Intercom, Edemy, and Unbounce. In 2016, Martell founded the SaaS Academy and grew it to become one of the largest coaching companies in the entire world. He also is an Ironman athlete, philanthropist, a husband, a father of 2 incredible boys. And today we're going to discuss his first book, Buy Back Your Time, where he teaches entrepreneurs at every level the secrets to work less and play more while building an empire. All right, Dan, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to talk about your book, Buy Back Your Time, and just your career in general. It's been so fascinating for me to learn about you and what you do. And as we were talking about before the show, I think so many times when it comes to people's health goals and the lifestyle they want to create, it comes down to having control over your calendar, having control over your time, setting these goals, but really like knowing how to own your time. And that's what you're an expert in. So thank you for being here and sharing your knowledge.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm honored. I was just mentioning that Anne, my executive assistant, is a customer of yours. She's a fan of yours. I've been, following you on social media, so I just love the message you put out there, and it's an honor to share with your audience, and hopefully I can serve.
Well, you definitely can, and I think what I love so much about your story is you had some challenges in your upbringing, and then you had this major rebound into starting your own business at 24. So can we talk about your fascinating life starting at a young age?
Yeah, I grew up in Eastern Canada, in the East Coast of Canada, second oldest of four. And I grew up in a really challenging environment. My mom was an alcoholic. My dad was traveling a lot, so he wasn't home. I kind of raised myself and was responsible for my younger brothers. And, at a young age, I got diagnosed with ADHD at about 11, got put on Ritalin. And for a long time, I just told myself this story that I was broken, that there was something wrong with me. And that carried on into kind of junior high when I got introduced to drugs. And that just caused my life to spiral out of control. I started spending time with people twice my age. I got in trouble with the law. Um, I had no self worth. I just didn't feel like, my parents were fighting all the time. They got divorced when I was 13. And then it was just the back and forth between both of them. And my mom just let us get away with everything. I mean, it was just a super unhealthy environment, and ended up in juvenile detention the first time when I was 15. Got out, made a commitment I would stay out of trouble, find a new group of friends. I lasted like 24 hours. Was just
Mhm.
back right into it, and then things probably got a lot worse afterwards. And at 16, I found myself in a high speed chase, stolen car, drunk and high, and I ended up smashing in the side of a house. And I went for this handgun I had in my backpack to take my life. And I told myself if the cops stopped me, I was going to just point the gun and let them do their job. And for whatever reason, when I went for the gun, it got stuck between the seat and the backpack it was in, and kept pulling on it and pulling on it. And I could hear the cops running up to the car, and they opened the door and just grabbed me and literally carried me across the front lawn. I wasn't even touching the ground. They just threw me in the back of the cop car. And I woke up the next morning sober in a jail cell, wondering what my life was going to look like. And I ended up getting sentenced to almost 2 years for the severity of my crimes. I was still a juvenile at the time, ended up in an adult prison just because they had a cell block dedicated to youth that had a criminal background and had drug addiction problems, and ended up doing 4 months there and really working on myself. I had a guard named Brian that really showed up for me, and shared a message of belief in who I was, not what I believed I was, that really shifted it for me. And I got released early to a rehab center called Portage. And this place was crazy. It was built in the middle of the woods. Um, and I think the reason I learned quickly why they did that is because if you tried to run away, you literally were walking down a highway for hundreds of miles and nobody was picking you up because they all knew you were one of those kids from that camp. And I did 11 months of therapy of working on myself, my emotions, my self-worth, rebuilding the relationship with my parents, my brothers and sisters. I'd lost their trust. And it was at the end of that program, I was helping Rick, the maintenance guy, who had become kind of like a big brother to me, clean out one of the old cabins because it was built in an old church camp. And in one of the rooms was this 486 computer. This is 1997. There was this old computer, and sitting next to it, a yellow book on Java programming, which is a pretty modern programming language at the time. And I just opened the book up, never touched a computer my whole life. And for whatever reason, it just spoke to me. And I just followed the instructions of chapter one in this book. And within 20 minutes, I got the computer to say hello world. And I thought, yeah,
Wow.
I was like, okay, maybe my brain is wired differently. Like I literally had this unfortunate false, well, fortunate or unfortunate. It was a false sense of, oh, maybe I should do computer stuff. And I remember a few days later talking to my dad, and I was like, I would always have a passion for botany, if you can imagine why. So plants.
Mhm.
Um, I may have partaked in growing quite a bit of plant stuff and computer programming. And my dad said something really wise. He was like, if you can always have a garden as a hobby, you should really lean into this computer thing. And I got out and became my new addiction. It literally, kind of filled that hole that had been left from kind of a previous life. And I just went all in. I just decided I'm going to code, I'm going to learn. And my dad did this commitment to me. He said, I'll buy you a book at the bookstore. So we went to like our local bookstore in the computer section and buy one book at a time. And he says, as long as you finished it, I'll buy you the next one. And he probably spent $1,500 over the next 2 years of just, and I remember going to, bookstores. I mean, it sounds kind of like you probably share the same passion for reading. Like bookstores have a really special place in my life just because it was the tool that allowed me to learn a new skill set that, shortly after getting out, I discovered this thing called the internet. Kind of turned out to be a big deal. And, I'm 17 at the time. This is 1998, 99.
AOL
And
floppy disk,
it's crazy.
dial
Yeah.
up.
All that. Yeah. Like ICQ, like,
AIM.
yeah, exactly. You get it. Okay. I wasn't sure if you
Oh
came from that
yeah.
era, but
I'm
yeah,
I'm that
I
era.
okay. Well, I literally just decided that's where I want to live. And I just became obsessed. And the truth is entrepreneurship and business, I think it was always kind of part of who I was. My dad used to joke if I could just find something that was legal, he thought I'd do really well in life.
Yeah.
Turned out he was maybe a little bit right. And yeah, and just since then I've had the pleasure of building and scaling software companies, and that's kind of my thing. And learning how to buy back time, which is like where I find leverage and scale. It was just this thing that came naturally to me because of my software background that a lot of people have turned to me over the last decade to teach them. So that's kind of where the connection from learning to write code in systems. It kind of became this like um non-chaotic thing that I did with my time. It's almost like meditative state of writing code that was the opposite of the chaos that I grew up in. And it just felt cool. And I just allowed myself to get obsessed with it. And I think that's like anybody that's built anything, it's just you do need to have that connection to the creation. And it really connected for me and has been a big part of my life since then.
You know what I find so fascinating? There are so many entrepreneurs that have been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD at a young age that I think, when we look at that, I look at it as I was diagnosed in third grade. My parents didn't put me on medication at the time. My mom was just like, how do we work around this kind of a thing? And I was just the social distracted kid. But whenever I meet someone who's been diagnosed with that, who is an entrepreneur, a lot of times I'm interviewing them on this podcast. And I think of it as a superpower because it is the ability to rabbit hole and go so deep into something to become obsessed with it and learning all aspects of it. You need the passion connection, and then it's like a synergy that I have seen over and over and over again, especially in the last 3 years of interviewing people for this podcast, that I always feel hard. I feel bad for even my girlfriends whose children are being diagnosed, or teenagers who are internalizing this as a flaw or a fault, when in reality, for so many, if used it appropriately, like the tool that it is, could be just magic for people.
Yeah, I one of my most popular videos on my YouTube channel is ADHD is your superpower, and it's funny because people start leaving comments. They're like, "Oh, you're so brave. Thank you for sharing that." And I'm just like, "There's nothing brave about it." Like, I literally am grateful for this part of my brain or the way I am. Now, I took medication my whole life, and about a decade ago, I decided to like get off. I think I was on Adderall. Was the last medication I took because I just didn't like who it made me. Right, and I'm a pro fan of doing what's right for you if you need medication or not. But like it is it is a superpower. And then at the same time, Kelly, I think you've probably experienced this because we can go all in. It's sometimes like once I started having a family, then I was like, oh, I need to learn. And this is where like just the scheduling and the calendar and time blocking and the perfect week, all these strategies I built for myself had to create the boundaries so that I didn't allow myself to create chaos in my life. Like, cause
Right.
I can go all in. Like I am when I it's funny because like I feel myself going there and I'm like, okay, is this okay? Like, have I negotiated my commitments to my wife and have I create the space in my calendar to do this? Because if it was, like I literally can hyper focus and at the same time, sometimes people are talking to me and I'm just not focused at all. So it's
Yeah.
fascinating, but it's just the creative connections, like it is beautiful. So it's funny, Kelly, because you said like a lot of my friends' kids are getting diagnosed and they always call me, how do you deal with it? And I'm like, I'm excited for them, but at the same time, it's I'm very careful to not label them because one of my buddies, Alex Sharfin, he explains it that he calls it an evolutionary hunter. Like back in the day, those types of people would be the ones that would have went out and hunted. And what happened is we've created this society of farmers, right? And like process and it's almost like, well, we're not made for this
Mm.
society. We were made for the old one. And we need to find out. That's why a lot of entrepreneurs I talk about, I think it's in chapter 3 where I talk about chaos as part of the 5 time assassins. Like it is 100% present in the top CEOs. I read the books, like Driven from Distraction was a book that really helped me understand myself. And he interviews some of the top CEOs. They all had learning disabilities, dyslexia, ADHD. And it was almost like no pressure, no diamonds. It was that, whatever you want to call it, challenge that shaped them into being somebody that's abnormal because, you know, it's easy to fit in if you just listen to what everybody tells you to do, but that's not going to create anything new in the world.
Right. And we need the hunters to get out there and create some new stuff. So let's talk about your book. I have other questions that I'd love to follow up after we talk about your book, like your family coach and how you retreat with your wife. I'm inspired by what you've created in your family, but let's talk about buy back your time. Let's talk about these time assassins. Let's talk about how do we take control over our time and really hone in so we can be the best version of ourselves for our business and our families.
Yeah, the very core of the book is this thing called the buyback principle, right? And I've built and exited numerous companies. I coach the largest software CEOs in the world. That's like my background. This thing called SaaS, software as a service. Um, and the thing that I teach them all from day one is that we don't hire people to grow our businesses. We hire people to buy back our time first. Because if we do the second, then we'll get the first. But if we do the first, we don't get the second. And the biggest risk to any business is not the market, is not your competitor. It's not, the bank not funding you. It's literally the CEO deciding that what they're building isn't something they want to build anymore because they hit what's called the pain line, right?
Mhm.
So to me, it's first understanding, hey, when you bring people into your team, their number one output is to take things off of your plate. And if you do the sequencing wrong, then that's where you end up hitting the pain line. You decide to either sell, stall, or sabotage your growth. Now, once you understand that, then people go, well, how how can I afford to hire people? And that's why I talk about this thing called the buyback rate. It's a very simple process, but one of my philosophies is that you can't build $1 million company off $10 tasks. It's just
Mhm.
impossible, right? There's not enough hours in the week. And that's why people think, well, I need to hire people to support me. But if you hire the wrong people in the wrong sequence, then you're going to just end up top heavy with the wrong people for the stage you're at in your business. So the buyback rate creates an understanding of what you can afford to pay people to buy back your time so that you hire people at the right stage of your growth and not people that are too expensive for where you're at. And the formula is in the book, but the big idea is it's essentially you take your income, divide it by 2000 because that's the amount of hours in a year, and then that number is essentially what you're producing per hour, and then divide that by 4, that's your buyback rate, because I want you to get a 4 times ROI on your investment of time.
Mhm.
So then if you're making 100,000 a year divided by 2000, that's about $50 an hour. And then you divide that by 4, that's $12.50. So then it's not a lot, but it's not nothing. And we
Mhm.
live in this beautiful world where you can hire people. I call it out tasking. Like you can out task things to people for that rate in other parts of the world, part time. You can get interns. But if that's what your income level is at, then that's your level of buying back right now, because you want to essentially get everything on your calendar that takes your energy, that doesn't make you money, off your calendar so that you can focus on things that actually make you money, that light you up, because that's the way we build a business that we don't grow to hate.
Right. And you've grown and sold so many companies, like you said. So when you're thinking about building a company, what's around the timeline that you start to bring people on, and what are some of those first positions you look at to take those tasks that you don't want to be doing off your plate?
Yeah, I mean, I'm involved in incubating so many companies that it's almost like a weekly basis. That's why I had to write this book. I literally was explaining myself to friends and family members, and over and over. Now it's like, here's the playbook. Just go implement it. But step 1 is administrative tasks, right? Like dollar for dollar, even part-time, having a virtual assistant is the most effective spend of labor, right? I had a mentor of mine. I moved to San Francisco in 2008. This guy named Naval Ravikant, and he's the one that explained to me that time is a constant, output is variable, and the only difference is leverage, right? Like somebody's output of like, Marie Forleo or Oprah Winfrey, like their output is so huge on what they can do because of leverage. Well, what are the forms of leverage? Because everybody has the same amount of time. Well, there's only 4 of them. They're called the 4 C's. The first one is capital. We all know that one. It's like money. Second is content, playbooks, videos, huge leverage. This podcast can be seen by 10 million people and it costs nothing more. So huge amount of leverage with content. The third one is code, right? Through automation and software and now AI. And then the fourth C is collaboration, which is labor, which is people. And understanding how to master those 4 master skills for leverage is how we grow our businesses and output as fast as you want to. It's to the degree that you can master those skills. So the first one is an executive assistant. Why? Because for a lot of people starting off, they actually don't know how to delegate. They don't know how to collaborate. They don't know how to work with other people, right? Like entrepreneurs are crazy. Like I've just known this because I've been doing it forever and I've coached so many that like their approach to leading sometimes isn't the right one for the people they're leading, because they think, well, everybody thinks the way I do. They do not. It's why you're the entrepreneur. So just starting in a kind of like a low stakes, low investment, collaborative environment with an executive assistant and learning the skill set of delegating, learning how to hold people accountable, learning how to coach people up. These are all skills that are required to grow your business. Then, and I have this whole framework called the replacement ladder in the book. Then the second level is on the delivery. So it doesn't matter what business you're in. The next opportunity, once you have an executive assistant managing your inbox, your calendar, and I teach all of that in the book, the folder structure for your emails, the perfect week for your calendar, how to make sure you set them up to win. Then it's supporting you in doing of the work. Now, if you're a coach, then you will still be the person who coaches, but somebody else should be responsible for onboarding, supporting, scheduling, coordinating, designing, all these other activities that are outside of the core thing of coaching. That's on the delivery side. Then the third level up, and you literally keep working your way up, is because it's always about cost and output of time. So, what thing can I spend the least amount of money on? Collaboration to buy back the most time so that I can reinvest that time in making more money doing things I love, right? And this is the sequence. Then we go to delivery is second. Third is marketing because most people don't have a predictable, scalable, repeatable marketing process, right? They do marketing when they don't have customers and then they get customers and they stop marketing and it's like this ebb and flow of being literally I get the call and I just tell people send me your balance sheet and I look at their financials and I'm like, yeah, I know I can tell, but your numbers tell me the story of where your opportunity is. Then it's sales because usually you want to keep selling until the end. And then if you have a sales process or a biz dev process or whatever, it's fourth level sales. And then only at the fifth level of the replacement ladder do you then start looking at leaders to own and lead those areas of the business, right? I think a lot of folks, they read these books sometimes and they tell them like, oh, you need to hire somebody that's an operator, somebody that can run your business because you're the creative and you're going to build the vision. But your revenue is like 150 grand or 300 grand a year and you don't even have an assistant. So when somebody's like, "Oh, I need to hire a director of operations," I'm like, "No, you don't. You need to start with a good executive assistant and you do the work that they would do because your business isn't at the size that can support that hire, that senior of a hire." But once you go to that level 5, that's when you actually can wake up. Think about this, Kelly. That's the first time where you wake up and you can go, somebody else marketed my business or my product. Somebody else talked to the customer and got them to buy. And then somebody else supported them, onboarded them, and started delivering some value while I was sleeping.
Yeah.
And that's literally 4 hires. That's all. Like if you make 4 hires in that sequence, because people ask me all the time, what's the sequence? The replacement ladder is your method for doing that.
I love that it is such a detailed, mapped out plan because I have been the CEO and entrepreneur that's had an executive coach tell me that I needed to raise capital, hire, my CMO, my COO, my CFO all first, and I was using a virtual assistant and or didn't have an assistant at the time and had bootstrapped the whole business financially, like worked scrappy style with designers to create the bags and the marketing for my protein powder. And I think the key here that you point out, it's like I'm raising my hand every time you say something because I'm like, that's me. It's replacing the marketing. It's like I own Instagram, I own the content. I'm getting some support team to create videos of podcasts and repurpose content. But a lot of the time when I'm speaking to my audience, I've always owned it and it feels good owning it. But you're exactly right. When I have a client who's getting ready for a deadline for a movie, a red carpet, if I have, an interview that I'm doing on someone else's podcast or, life is taking me away from the actual marketing of my business, it's crickets on Instagram or YouTube for me because it's not automated. I haven't replaced that part of my business. One, because it's like, how do you make it so much of yourself and also delegate? And like you said earlier, it's very hard for some entrepreneurs to delegate. A
Yeah,
lot.
I mean, the first thing I always go to is the current calendar, right? So
Yeah.
the buyback loop, which is the core process of the book, right? It doesn't matter what stage you're at, if you're a 9-figure company or starting off as even just a content creator. As soon as you hit the pain line of like, okay, my life is chaotic. If I grew my business 3x next month, it would mean my calendar would explode. Then you have to go through the buyback loop process. And the first step is to audit, right? Look at your calendar for the next 2 weeks, audit it and measure it from things that light you up to things that take your energy and then also things that have a low cost to pay somebody else versus high cost. And you take everything that's like $1 sign low cost and a red, meaning it takes your energy, and you put it into a bucket. And that's the only next hire you should be making, right?
Right.
So it's not only like the marketing or the sales, it's literally all these other tasks like financials and maybe it's social media scheduling, maybe it's podcast scheduling or writing whatever. Like we live in this world where we actually know what we got to go do. We just don't have the time to go do it, right?
Mhm.
So if we don't buy back 8 hours, 20 hours a week doing these low value tasks so that we can go build the systems. Because, in the book, I talk about this thing called the 10-80-10 rule, which I learned watching Steve Jobs and all these very creative people, Andy Warhol. I talk about Oprah Winfrey and many others, right? And myself, like I produce, like all my social media. If people go online, I have millions of followers across all my platforms. I don't do anything other than this. Like I'm on a camera, but I have two cameras recording me right now. So I have two cameras recording me right now. And when I'm done this conversation with you, I just hit stop. It automatically syncs to a folder. My team picks it up and there's a process design. And within, 48 hours, it'll be on social media. It'll be part of the queue and it'll be republished all over the place. So every person can get to that place if they give themselves permission. But the 10-80-10 rule, the way it is the first 10% I want to be involved in. So I want to be involved in like, the creative tone, the voice, the style of the project. And then the 80% is the production. And then at the very end, maybe I have like a batch time in my calendar to review the videos that are about to go out over the next month. And I just have them all linked up and I just click them, open up in tabs, hit play, watch them, and just approve them. And that's that last 10%, which is the integration. I mean, even Gary Vee, who everybody knows, he has a whole team that's recording him, editing. And then there's an iMessage group chat where the videographers post different clips and he hits play, watches them, and then he chooses to post them himself on the different channels and write the caption for some of them, not all of them. And that's the feedback loop to the editors. Like that I liked because I picked it out of this chat and I published it. And that's that last 10%. So a lot of creatives have a hard time stepping away because they think, well, this is my fingerprint. This is my unique thing. And I would agree, but I also think there's a way to collaborate to have your uniqueness in the creative endeavor and still not be involved. I mean, Steve Jobs would go and meet with Johnny Ives in the design studio. He would come in and meet for 30 minutes and talk about ideas and creative things. And then Johnny would take that and go to his team and they would build prototypes and, play with things and do research around technologies. And then they would show him stuff. And then at the very end, he was still the guy on stage presenting it to the market because that was his genius. That's the thing that he wanted to do, that last 10%. So there's a way to do it so that you don't feel like you're going to lose the magic, because that's the biggest fear for most creators.
Definitely. Well, I love that too, because when it comes to the actual production of it, it's, me cutting real videos together, being like, that just took me a half hour. I love the reel. It's a representation of me, but that could have easily been created by someone else and the caption owned by me and the message owned by me. I love
Totally.
that.
And that's the buyback rate, right? Like you got to look at what your buyback rate is. Kelly, I can just imagine where your business is at. I'm pretty sure your buyback rate is a lot higher than a video editor. You can get videos like the reels and the shorts, because I have people hit me up on social media all day long. I'm sure you do too. I mean, it's $25 to $50 a reel. And if that takes you 30 minutes or an hour, that's probably way
Yeah.
below where you should be spending your time.
Yep, probably. Oh my goodness. Well, so let's talk about what you can do with your time when you buy it back and when you get a little freedom in your life, because like we said earlier, you can easily get sucked into the things that you're super excited about with your business, but you don't want to look back on your life and think that you've dedicated just your entire life and all of your time to work when you have a wife, you have two boys, you have a new dog, like you have aspirations. You went from being 260 pounds, learning how to swim, and then swimming Ironmans. You're getting ready for an ultra. Like you talk about a major 360 in someone's life, from being where you were in your teens to having this amazing career, but really prioritizing what I would attribute to be the most important things in life and making time and holding boundaries for them. Can we talk about your journey to health and your journey to creating these meaningful relationships with your wife and your boys?
Yeah, what's cool that we're talking today, Kelly, is that today is my 11th year anniversary of quitting drinking alcohol. Literally today that we're chatting. And if I had to pinpoint the moment where that, health journey began, it was definitely that moment. And it's because I grew up in alcoholism. Like my mom was an alcoholic, her parents were alcoholics, my dad's parents were alcoholics. I grew up in addiction. I should have never started drinking again after rehab, and I did. And it was always this thing that when I looked at, all the pain and friction in my life always happened when I had consumed alcohol. So it's like there's nobody's woken up the next morning and said, my life is better after last night having drank. Like
Yeah.
0 times that's ever happened. So my wife was pregnant with our first, and we were actually on like kind of like a baby vacation in the Bahamas. And I had drank too much that day. I mean, I remember when I came back from the liquor store, she's like, why did you buy all that alcohol? I was like, I don't know. We might make some friends. Like there was enough for 4 people because she wasn't drinking.
Yeah.
And in that moment of us fighting, I think on the second day, I just decided I don't want to introduce this to my family. I want to quit. I want to break this lineage that I'd experienced, and I knew better. And I just decided I poured everything down the drain, and it took her 4 or 5 years to actually believe this was a forever decision, even though like I told her it was, and I'm done. It's not the first time I'd tried quitting. And that created this space. Like, I'm not gonna lie. If I didn't do that, I just can't see a world where, I could take my health seriously and still, on a Friday night or Saturday night go drinking, because so much of my health habits today are early morning routines, right? So it's like people, I think, even this morning, we have a Tuesday morning founders hike we do in Kelowna where I live. And this guy shows up, and you could tell he's like worn. But I have this rule: anybody in the world, I will meet with them, but it has to be at 6:30 a.m. hiking on Tuesday. I didn't even know I had messaged him, but he wanted to meet with me. But last night he went out drinking, and he had a few too many pints, and he shows up, and I'm like, oh man, he's in for a world of pain. Because
Yeah.
that's the thing with health is like, if you decide to get your stuff together, a lot of it's early morning.
Mhm.
And, you know, that's not, even a bad meal. Imagine you go and you eat like a full pizza and, whatever. And it's like the next morning you got to wake up and go climb a mountain. Like your body's just not going to be happy with you. So my journey was hard for a long time. I kind of, I did the ups and downs with my weight. I quit drinking, but I would still like, it was almost like eating was a reward for me. And then
Mhm.
I ended up hiring, because I'm a big fan of coaching. I've had dozens of coaches in my life, and I met a guy named Adam, and he has a company called My Body Tutor. And Adam taught me the psychology of my relationship with food, and it was just the most powerful thing, because you never realize this, but most of us use food for celebration or for comfort. So you're kind
Dopamine.
of, yeah, and you're kind of stuck, because it's like when you have a great day at work, you want to go out for dinner. I used to do this all the time. I'd crush it at work, like boom, revenue records, whatever. I get home, I said, babes, you're not cooking tonight. We're going to your favorite restaurant. Grab the kids, let's go. Or like, or you have the worst day, and then you go into the snack cupboard and you
Mhm.
start grabbing chips. And I mean, I used to make these epic like nacho plates, right? Like layers cheese, jalapenos, microwave, and just why? Because I didn't want to feel, is like you
Mhm.
said, dopamine. And so Adam really helped me with the psychology of my relationship to food. And it was really just rewiring my habits of when uh, I'm feeling that I turn to food it was essentially another addiction, right? It was just another
Mhm.
thing that I was using not to feel. So that was about a decade ago that it really helped me overcome that. And then it was just like the consistency habit of like, you lose some weight, you go on vacation, you put it back on. And it was just like this up and down, to finally it was just like, oh no, I'm not gonna diet, right? Like even that word I don't like. I'm just gonna choose to eat healthy. Like I'm creating a life plan for me. So to me, the way I eat today, some people might consider it a diet, but like I eat great food. It's super tasty. There's never a meal that I'm not looking forward to. I'm not overeating. I manage my macros, like, and this is another lesson I've learned, it's funny because like every part of our lives apply to other parts of our lives. So business. Well, what changed in my health journey? I will tell you this for sure. The more I measured the areas of my life around my health, the healthier I got. What does that
Mhm.
mean? Started wearing a fitness tracking, right? Watch. I started, so I manage my caloric burn. I manage my physical exertion. I started measuring my food intake, right? Using my fitness pal and like looking at, so understanding where was I adding, good or bad food into my diet. Most people don't realize is, all this stuff, Kelly. It's like they're drinking their calories. Like
Oh, yeah.
that alone is like a big no-no, right? Or they don't understand that something that looks healthy is full of fat, right? And all of a sudden their macros are out of whack, or high in carbs. And like, so I definitely connected the measurement frequency and the consistency of measuring to a positive outcome and achievement of goals. And it's the same thing in business. If your business isn't growing, I know you don't even have to tell me what you're not doing. I know you're not measuring frequently enough. Because
Mhm.
if you measured the right things frequently enough, your brain would go, well, that's not good. We should probably solve that. And,
Mhm.
it's like one time I have this incredible friend of mine, and he's my business partner, Matt, and he shares this story publicly. But I actually coached him first. I knew him a long time ago. I coached him. He exited his company, and I got on a call with him, and I'm looking at him, and this is from a pure place of love.
Yeah.
But we're talking about like next idea and da da da. And I just look at him and I said, dude, when's the last time you jumped on a scale?
Mhm.
And he's like, it's been a while. I said, yeah,
Mhm.
I can tell, bro. This is a guy that ran a full distance Ironman probably 8 years prior. And
Mm.
he probably put on like 60 pounds, 70 pounds. And and that's all. And I said, dude, I'm not trying, like, this is private between you and I just wanted you to like, hey man, you just got to measure. I think you think you're here and you're probably here. A
Yeah.
lot of people, they don't want to know. And he jumped on a scale. A week later, he texted me and he said, okay, this isn't cool. I'm going to fix this. And he just finished his first 50K ultra and he's done several Ironman. Like, and it's just this pattern I've seen over and over again. If we measure it, we will manage it. And the frequency we do that. So, I think what happened for me from a like kind of like a timeline was just it started simple. It started with like a 5K. It started with a 10K. And then it was a half marathon. Then it was a marathon. And I remember I was like, I'm never doing a marathon. That's the dumbest thing in the world. Like I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3". I weigh a lot, like not good for my joints. And then I did the marathon. And then I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I was running with a friend and he's like, we should get road bikes. And I'm like, dude, you will never see me in spandex. Like, I'm not that guy. That was like my thing. And I remember the first bike ride we ever did, I'm wearing board shorts. I'm literally
Yeah.
wearing like gym shorts on a road bike, and they're all in spandex. And I immediately realized why they wear spandex because of the wind resistance. So
Yeah.
they got me wearing spandex. And then it was like we did a bike ride and then a run. And then they were like, hey, if we swam, that would have been considered a triathlon. I'm like, well, how far is the swim? He's like, well, a sprint's only like 650 meters. And I'm like, well, I can't swim, but that sounds far, but not crazy. And then that got me probably 4 or 5 years ago down the triathlon route. So it's really just, I think, and we were talking about Jesse Itzler earlier, like he calls it a misogi. And I think that's the best way to think about it for me too, is that every year I choose one thing that is hard enough to shape me. Right. And this
Mm.
year is the ultra. And this is the crazy part though, is when you're training for like anything hard, just part of the training can be something really cool. Like last year, I swam 7 kilometers across the lake I live in front of. And that was just part of training. Like it wasn't,
Yeah.
but to a lot of people, that would have been a bucket list. So I think people see folks that are like what I call their chapter 23, right? They're way further along. They're like, oh, this guy's doing Ironmans and ultras. And like, I'm just trying to get my first 5K or get off the couch or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, but you're comparing your chapter 1 to my chapter 23,
Yeah.
right? I've got 11 years of dedicated focus and, compounded results. And what happens is that at first it doesn't look good. It's the invisible progress. Most people don't realize that, the first week you might have a big win, then you hit a plateau after 6 weeks, and then you're all discouraged. It's like, no, you're still making progress. It's just invisible. It's underneath the surface. And all I know is that over time, it starts to compound. So at the beginning, you might get some wins and it's good because now you're like, you're into it. I'm going to the gym. I'm being consistent. But then you hit a plateau and you're like, I'm not gaining anymore. It's like, oh, just stay with it. And then towards the end, like now it's almost like it's not easy because it takes time, But because I've built the muscle and the discipline and even just the rhythms and the routines, like it doesn't feel like work. Eating healthy to me, it's literally zero. I mean, it's proteins and greens. And I
Yeah.
love salmon. I love chicken. I love a good steak. Like as long as I hit my macros, like I'm not starving myself. I'm
Mhm.
moving my body. I'm staying strong. I've got energy. I mean, that like Kelly, that's the one thing for me. I remember when my kids were born, I was like, I never want to be the dad that says no to my kids because I'm tired.
Yeah.
I just don't. I made a commitment. I said, I don't want to come home ever. And my kids are like, let's go do something. And I say no because I'm physically exhausted because I wasn't taking care of myself. And this got tested like probably a year ago. We live on the top of a mountain in British Columbia. And I'm doing 75 hard, which is a mental toughness program.
Mhm.
And I'd already done my 2 workouts for the day. And my son Noah, who's 8, says, hey, can we go downtown for dinner, just you and I? Okay, well, going downtown for dinner on his bike. Going downtown for dinner means we go down the mountain, go for dinner, and then I have to pull him back up. And my wife
Okay.
hears this and Renee, she looks at me and she's like, hey, no, Noah, like I think that's a bit much. Like, they call
Dad's
me
done
Dita.
2
Yeah.
workouts.
Yeah. They're like, I think let's do it tomorrow or on the weekend or whatever. And I just look at him. I said, no, buddy, we're gonna go.
Mhm.
Right. Like I just never wanted to say no. And they'll never know. They may never know. But I'll know. And I just think like that my kids has been the biggest why for me to be a better person than any other factor in my life. I I just know how, monkey see, monkey do, right? Like
Yeah.
they're watching. They do not care what I say they should do. They will watch what I do. And if I
Mhm.
say I'm going to do this race and I don't finish it, or if I say I'm going to train and I don't wake up the next morning, they know. And to me, that's a powerful, powerful force.
Oh, the biggest gift you can give your kids. I have to say, when I think about your boys, my dad came from a lineage of alcoholism. My grandmother, my paternal grandmother died of
Mm.
alcoholism. My dad, my mom said he could drink like a 12 pack of Coors Light, and it was like he hadn't had a sip of alcohol. Like he always acted pretty even keel, but the anxiety levels and all the things that came with that type of behavior, the instant gratification of post work needing to have a beer or whatever it was something I don't remember. My dad quit drinking when I was 5 years old, when my youngest sister was born, actually. I'm one of
Oh,
three
that's
girls.
beautiful.
My dad is an entrepreneur. I remember his dedication to being an entrepreneur, getting up at 5 a.m. every day, going to work, like building his business. We had this thing called, it was Indian Princesses at the time. I think it's trail guides. He'd camp with us once a month. We'd do like father daughter events. He, was fully involved, all the father daughter dances, all the soccer games. Like it makes me really like I'm pregnant.
Mm,
Obviously, I'm really emotional about this, but like to think
beautiful.
about your boys and the example you're setting for them, the time you're dedicating to them, like alcohol for so many people is an absolute roadblock. Like you're not getting up and showing them how to build a business and sell one. You're not getting up and showing them how to train. You're not saying yes to them. And this what you talk about, the ease of being able to continue to work out, to continue to show up is because you don't have the startup energy of being hungover. You don't have to have the startup energy of feeling the shame and guilt of that process and being really like, the handcuffs of that type of activity, and even if it's light and easy, like, I just I seriously love being pregnant and breastfeeding because I'm like
Easy.
like I can't remember like the last time and it's just not a thing anymore. And my dad never told us we shouldn't drink or that he was never hard on us about it in college or, in our 20s or whatever. But, my sisters and I talk about it all the time. Like, it's just like not interesting anymore. And
What an
it's,
incredible role model.
so I think the gift that you're giving your boys is just absolutely priceless. Like I have so many wonderful memories with my dad growing up that I know I wouldn't have had if he had had this relationship with alcohol and hadn't cut it off. And like my mom said, like he wasn't a fall down drunk. He wasn't drinking and driving. But he was checking out. he was checking out and you know, he wasn't really there. And that's a gift he's given me for, I'm going to be 40 over 35 years. So such a beautiful thing to give your boys. And it's why, when you pull these roadblocks out of your way and you start, like you said, measuring the things that you really want, you commit to something, you get consistent with it, and then you have all this confidence that's making its way and fingering its way from every single part of your life, from business to your relationship with your kids to your personal goals of health and maybe some people look at your diet or your lifestyle and call it a diet, but in reality, it's your worth, and then you're feeding yourself that worth, and you're showing your kids how to do the same, which is just I was obviously so inspired when I read your book and have started following along. It's just these are the kinds of examples that I want on the podcast because it's inspiring for people. This interview might spark someone to say, like, yeah, like, what am I really getting out of that relationship? Or how can I really show up in a different kind of way? And it's really cool. So thank you for telling your story and for sharing how you've like leveled up your entire life.
I appreciate it, Kelly. You know, it's, I never started in business to ever want to do this, sharing, writing a book. Like that was never, I just started because I wanted to create stuff. Like I'm a creator. I think most entrepreneurs, they just, it's kind of cool if you think about it that the world only gets better because an entrepreneur wakes up and decides to solve a problem. Like that's,
Mhm.
Our houses we live in, to our communities we live in, to the things we use every day, they exist because some person in their mind saw a better way, and we all get to benefit from it. And then I realized that the most powerful thing I could do is not to create a tool for people, is to actually use the thing that I used to think to myself was the reason why somebody wouldn't listen to me.
Mhm.
That's the crazy part, Kelly, is a lot of the stories I shared with you today and I wrote in my book for 15 years, I didn't tell anybody. They were
Mhm.
personal. I was embarrassed by them. I had a lot of shame around it. And I realized that the thing that I thought would discredit me is actually the thing that gives me credit.
Mhm.
Like when I sit down with a friend of mine who asked me about quitting drinking, the only reason they ask is because they know I did, because I shared it publicly, or they've seen it, or they asked about it. And in that moment, that's the thing that I might have had a lot of shame around before, that it gives me permission to help my friend. And I just
Right.
think for people listening, like that's a really interesting perspective that I would invite people to consider, is that no matter what they've gone through, if they've gotten through it, that thing doesn't discredit you at all. It's actually what makes you unique, and it gives you the opportunity to serve others. So like writing the book, like I'm not going to sit here and tell you I woke up 20 years ago and I was like this productivity nerd and this efficiency person. It was literally from, I used to be engaged when I was in my early 20s, and my fiance left me, to dealing with business growth challenges where team members just quit and they're like, I can't work with you. Like all of this stuff. And that's why the book is a lot of personal stories, a lot of client stories, a lot of research. I just wanted people to hopefully, you know that I get it because I've been there, and that these lessons were hard fought. And I'll tell you, on the other side of it, life's pretty awesome. Like
Mhm.
it's I don't know. I just wake up every day super grateful for just the people in it, the opportunities that I've got, the message that I get, and I just think I don't know. I got lucky when I was 17 and I almost took my life. I knew that I was here to do something. I didn't know what it was. I just knew there was something. Like there's no reason I'm still alive. And because the odds, the statistics were 100% against me, and I just wake up every day to try to make every day count, like legit count, not a little bit, like a lot. And that's probably why I've been so obsessed with understanding where I allocate my time and what's the impact of those decisions, and where the juice of life come from. Like, like where does fulfillment come from, and where does progress come from? So it's been a journey that I've just absolutely loved going on. And honestly, meeting people like yourself, Kelly, like I don't know your dad, but I like him a lot.
He's a
Like
really good dude.
I can tell. And that this is,
Yeah,
you know, I think there's a lot of dads like your dad out there, and the more they shine their light, the more I think they'll inspire other dads to make better decisions. And that's how the world gets better.
definitely. And you're doing the same. And it, it's I'm sure really humbling for you to look at where your life's at now. But like you said, like you're striving for purpose and really like the juice of life. And I think what's so cool is to watch you push yourself in every little aspect. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your family coach. I thought that was really an interesting tidbit about you and to help your wife and your kids have a deeper relationship. I think for a lot of people coming from a family of alcoholism or maybe where just the like or the previous generations where communication wasn't, prioritized in the same kind of way it is today. I'm really interested to see like what came of that. And then also I know you retreat with your wife. Like how are you how I want to say like how is it not just lip service? Like how are you getting better at the emotional side of these relationships?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. It's so fun for me because like it's a journey. Like even this morning, my wife and I, she got mad at me for the way I was talking to her about like the kids taking the dog for a walk. And, I was upset, but because we had invested in our relationship, in therapy, in our family coach, in our retreats and stuff, like within 26 minutes, she comes over and she just kind of hits me in the back. And I turn around and she goes, "Can I have a hug?" And I said, "Yeah." And I gave her a hug and I go, "I can't be mad at you." And she goes, "I know." And I said, "I'm so sorry." And she goes, "It's good. And I love you." And wh- I share that story because that is a byproduct of doing the work. Okay. All
Yeah.
caps, the work. What does that mean? Is I had a lot of trauma I had to obviously overcome as a child. She
Mhm.
had some that she didn't even know she had. Right. So, like, we've had, so our therapist, Brooke, who's incredible, Bergman is her last name in case you want to look her up, highly recommend her. She works with entrepreneurial couples. That's like her sweet spot. Zen Founder is the company name, and there's a bunch of people behind that company that. And here's why it's powerful: is I literally can do a call with Brooke one on one and explain to her kind of what's going on, and she can give me perspective. And she's a like super well read and just a life person. She's not like a normal therapist that like just sits there in a Socratic method and asks you questions. She'll actually say, well, based on this book and what you're experiencing, here's a strategy, and then I can go read the book and whatever. And then she'll do a call with my wife one on one, and then we'll do a call with all three of us. So it's kind of awesome having the therapist do the one on one and then bring us together and kind of guide outcomes that we both want, but we probably don't have the tools yet. And this is why sometimes when I'm upset with my wife, I go, I've got to apologize. This is the real language I use all the time. I don't have the tools yet to approach this conversation in a way that I think is going to get us to a productive outcome. So I just need some space, and I'm going to go process. And when I'm ready, I'll come back. I'm not leaving. Now, this is something Brooke taught me, right? Like some people get upset and they leave. You're not allowed to do that, because if you do that, you're essentially
It's
creating a sense of
abandonment.
abandonment. Exactly. You just have to, but then my wife would like, "Ah," and she'd come after me, and we came to agreement is that all I have to do is just say I need some space. I will come back. Give me an hour. Give me, sometimes I mean, it hasn't been a long time. It's been a day, but like, give me some space and I will come back. Or the repair attempts. My wife touching me on the back was what's called a repair attempt. And when a partner does a repair attempt, you should respond,
Yeah.
right? And some people don't because they're like, "I'm still mad." It's like, get over it. What are you
Yeah.
going to stay mad for a day? You're not, what are you, is this the thing that's going to cause the thing to be, it's over? It's not over. So it's like, get it over with, get it cleared out, work on it. I actually talk a lot about that in the book from a feedback point of view. But so with the family coach, that's Brooke. And then there's another guy named Sean Donahue, Donahue. Sean's his name. He's awesome. Okay. He teaches parents how to create connection with their kids, or what he calls emotionally coach their kids, which is a must. It's like people are like, well, where are my kids supposed to learn about like high IQ or EQ? And the schools aren't teaching this. It's like, yeah, emotional coaching should come from you to your, like, it's the only thing that really matters to me. My kids come home and they're like, "Hey, here's my report card." I don't care. I care because they care, but I personally don't care. I do not expect my school to teach my kids anything. All of our kids are homeschooled. It's whether the parents realize it or not. Like
Mhm.
they might go to a place, I call it government assisted daycare. They might go to a place during the day, but you are responsible for teaching your kids stuff. And one of the most important things for me that Sean's taught me is being an emotional coach for them. What does that mean? Well, the dog thing this morning, they were fighting. They both went for the walk. They shouldn't have done that. Anyways. And then they got in a fight. And then you have to take the time to actually sit down. He has this great line. He says, no correction without connection.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to correct my child unless I create emotional connection first, which means I can't come in there fighting. Hey,
Mhm.
you listen to me, sit down, go to your room. But that's zero. It's, hey, bud, we just need some separation. So you're going to go here and you're going to go there. I'm going to come talk to you both. And it takes 15, 20 minutes. I have to sit there and talk to my kids and use feeling words, right?
Mhm.
Anger is not the word. There's
Mhm.
like rejection and I felt taken advantage of. Like there's all these feelings. That's the emotional coaching part of it.
Mhm.
So the reason why we invest in our relationship, the quarterly retreats where we go away disconnected for 2 to 3 days every quarter to plan on our lives. I just looked at all the success I had in business, right? Building, multi-million-dollar companies and exiting these companies and say, well, what are the principles that work there? Why don't we have them in our life? Like we
Mhm.
have family core values. They're on our wall. You walk into our house, they're right there. And they're not negotiable. And when my kids do something that is outside of the core values, I just grab them and I say, hey, come over here. Which one of these values do you feel you're not embracing right now? That one. Perfect. That's not what Martells do. Let's talk about it. And we move them forward. I worked with a guy named Chris and Melissa at Family Brand. I think, yeah, familybrand.com. Amazing humans. And then Brooke, what we did, which a lot of people thought was fascinating, was that we flew her up from California to Canada to live with us in our home for 3 days. And she woke up early in the morning with us and watched the interactions and did sessions with Renee, did sessions with me, did sessions with the boys, solo, family. She came to all the meals. Like she got in our stuff because Kelly, like people go to a therapist and they're like, I call it a hallucination. It's their hallucination on what happened on the world, but
Right.
it is not fact. The only fact is whatever a person sitting outside would observe and
Yeah.
go, oh, I hear what you're saying happened, but honestly, I saw it this way. Right.
Right.
So like having that, it's no different than a basketball coach or a football coach watching tape, right? They're
Right.
watching tape with their team to say, here's what you did wrong. Next time, do this. So she would sit us down and go like, hey, I want you to try this. One of my favorite takeaways from that, dozens, but this is the one I think a lot of people could benefit from, is takeoffs and landings. Takeoffs and landings. Takeoffs are anytime I leave the house and anytime I come back. Okay. And
Mhm.
there's a book on this. I don't know what it's called, but this simple idea, because Kelly, I'm so scheduled, structured. Oh, it's time. I got to go for my hike. Oh, it's time. I got to go to this appointment. Oh, it's time. I got to meet. And I just leave. And then my wife will be like, Dan, and I'd be gone.
My husband does that all the time.
Okay. Well, you got to clip this.
Yeah.
Husband, watch this. Okay. I will tell
Chris,
you,
are you listening? Are you
Chris, this
listening?
will change the game. So takeoffs are, if I'm leaving, I need to go see her and let her know I'm going to do this. I love you, babes. I'll see you in a bit and give her a kiss. If
Yeah.
I do that, easy peasy.
Right.
Then when I come back, she needs to act and I need to act like it is the best part of my day. I am now back. Hey guys, I'm home. And then the family's like, right. And we taught it to our boys as well, right? Because we got to
Yeah.
do it for them when they come home from school. So take off and landing, but it also pertains to like going to a social event, right?
Mhm.
And agreeing when we go there, what is okay. It's like, I want you next to me all night. Let's just agree on it tonight, right?
Yeah.
And you are my ally. I don't know these people. I want you near me. Or I'm good. Hey, I want you to go be with your friends tonight. I've got my 2 other friends that I know here, and that's fine as well, right? But
Yeah.
even just like understanding how to do takeoffs and landings when you go out in your home, I thought that was just a cool thing of dozens that I learned because I invested in bringing our family coach into our family. And I
Yeah.
think that's the big thing, Kelly, is just, when people say things are important to me, I say, what's important to you? They go, oh, my health is important to me. My family is important to me. My business, my team is important to me. Blah, blah. All right, cool. Those are things you say important. All right, let's write them down so you remember them, because you'll forget about them in 12 seconds when I ask you. Now show me your calendar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where's your
Show me your
time?
bank account. Show me your bank account and tell me how much have you invested in your health, how much you invested in your family, how much you invested in your team, all the things that you just told me is important. Show me where you're actually proactively allocating time to invest in them. Oh, but you invest in the stock market, you invest in other things and growing your business, but I don't see team stuff. I see marketing spend to grow your business, but I don't see where you're doing one-on-ones with people. I don't see where you're doing offsites. I don't see so I just think that to me is the simplest test. And I want to be able to pass that. We have a budget that we allocate. My wife and I, we have agreement every year. We do one seminar a year as a couple. We do one seminar as a year as a family. It's part of our rhythm, right?
So
Last year we
cool.
did Date with Destiny. It was awesome, right? We did it 6 years prior. Like, and next year we're gonna probably do some Joe Dispenza. So like just being on a growth journey with our family, with ourselves, investing in our relationship to me is same reason I quit drinking. I just couldn't see a future over a long enough time horizon where alcohol was not going to create massive pain in my life.
Mhm.
Right. Like that was why I was like, there's no way over the next 25 years that I don't create major pain for my kids if I'm still drinking. So that's a goner. That's done. And then the other one is, how can I create rhythms and routines that I know whatever outcome I want, which is I call it epic marriage. I want like a crazy great marriage. Unapologetically, I literally want to just have an incredible relationship with my kids and my wife and all stuff. So then what are the rhythms and routines that would need to be true for that probability to be inevitable, right? Like I always
Right.
say, we don't rise to the level of our goals. This is Atomic Habits, a James Clear saying. It's we rise to the level of our systems, right? So I create rhythms and routines, and I talk a lot about it in my book with the preloaded year and the perfect week, so that the outcomes we want are inevitable,
Mhm.
right? It's very simple. If I eat 2,000 calories a day, 200 grams of protein, and work out for 45 minutes a day, I will always be in great shape. That is my
Mhm.
standard. That is my process. That is my rhythm, right?
Mhm.
Does that change if I'm doing training? For sure. But as a standard, that is the standard. That is the commitment. So date nights, Thursdays with my wife. We do this cool thing, Kelly, on the date nights, and I'll stop talking, is every second one. So we do them every week on Thursdays. And here's the key. Dinner and a movie, no. I try to date my wife, and the biggest thing is I try to do new experiences with her. So
Mhm.
we together we experience new stuff. So it takes a lot of work. I own that. But I love it. And then every second one though, we do couples. So this is a lot of fun. Most people don't consider this. So we have a list of like 35 other families in our city that we think are great. And like this Thursday, we're going laser tagging with our friends. And
That's
so like,
awesome.
yeah, exactly. Like, and I'm going to crush them because I'm very competitive, um, but I think that idea, a lot of people are like, we just got back from vacation for our spring break with 3 other families that we vacation from our city. And people are like, how did you meet them? You've only lived there because we moved here 2 years ago. They're like, well, we just, if like, I like you, it's like, Kelly, if you and your husband lived in our town, you'd be on our list. I'd be like, hey, we
Aw,
need to spend time with
same.
Kelly. Yeah. So it's like, but then, you know, it's just deciding like what rhythm would if because here's what the goal I'm trying to achieve is I want to create a high quality network for my kids and their kids.
Mhm.
So if I meet these parents and I'm like, I like their values, I'm sure their kids are going to share the same values. So then we need to create a rhythm where we're spending time with them. Well, that's not going to happen unless we're seeing them and talking about life. So that's the whole, like, I think the chosen family versus the biological family. Like I think it's really important for people to be a little bit more intentional about the family side of who they spend time with, because it's easy to spend time with people that you actually have outgrown the shared values and you haven't found new people, but they exist. Like every city has them. They're
Yeah.
there. Just takes a little bit of work. And that's one of the fun rhythms we do that allows us to stay connected with really inspiring couples.
I think you make a really good point. A lot of people feel like they can't divorce their friends or move on from their friends, but it's not about that. It's that a lot of times you're outgrowing people based on what your values are at different stages in your life. I can tell you, we had a trip to the mountains with a bunch of families, and it was very clear within the first like 24, 48 hours, which kids had unlimited access to iPads, and we're like in this epic place with snow and sleds and skiing and snowboarding and hiking, and like new coffee shops and all the things. And, um, if your system is like, yeah, you're bored, you can use your iPhone, your iPad and play these games, then of course the kids are going to do that. This instant gratification, that's like a brain suck, dopamine hit, right? And the drive home, like my husband and I were just talking about, like, okay, like it becomes really hard to hold true to your own values when 2 days
The
after we
other
get
kids are doing it. Yeah.
back from the trip, my son's taken the clear plastic piece out of our produce drawer in our in our refrigerator, the separator, and is like, "Mom, it's my iPad." I'm like, "You're 4. We just don't do iPads until like you're 8 or 10. It'll be for when you travel." Like, and it's just to protect those becomes, whether it's sugar for me or things like that. It's like it really makes it so much more easy when you're really what
Around
you
other
say,
people
you're
that share the
working,
same values. Yeah.
yeah, you're working on just like it's group parenting a lot of times when you do these trips or you are around these people for sports or whatever you're doing with your kids. It makes it easier, and just the reminder that like you as the parent in the room have control over, coaching your kids and being an example for your kids, but also protecting your boundaries by bringing families with the same values in.
Yeah, I remember 2 years ago we were on a vacation, and my son Noah said he was mentioning one of the couple's moms said, "Why does she always scream so much?" And I
Yeah.
was like, "You're not wrong, buddy, but that's just their reality, right?" And like the family side for me, and I'm super blessed that for the most part, my immediate family, we've all kind of grown up. Like literally, I got sober and clear, and then my other brother, and then we're all incredibly successful entrepreneurs. But the friend side, though, there's definitely been an adjustment, and my role is just create more space. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to say yes to the same weekend that you just did. You could say, look, like I want to see those people at Christmas, maybe a couple times a year, but we need to create some space for other people, right? And I think that's where they think, well, it's not cutting them out forever. It's you can be compassionate, but then it's like just don't always say yes. Don't call. I mean, literally, Kelly, I coach so many founders, and I'm like, well, why are you going there? They're like, well, I called them and we were talking and they invited me. I was like, you called them. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it is my cousin or whatever. And I'm like, okay, how about just don't call them and wait for them to ask and say no a few more times and create some space, and then go and proactively find some people. Because you're right. When you get together as a family on a trip, you're co-parenting with the other parents.
Mhm.
And if other parents, like other dads, if they hit their kids, that would be a big no-no.
Hard
If
no.
other dads got sloppy drunk around their kids, big no-no. Like, and luckily that is just so far from the reality of the people I spend time with, that I'm actually proud that my kids get to be influenced by these fathers. These are incredible men that are present and active, and my favorite part is that they also let their kids do hard things. Like
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of some parents that like do everything for their children and don't let them like struggle a little bit. So it's fun if I'm not paying attention and my son's just struggling with something, my buddy Todd's not going to jump in and solve it for him because he's thinking, oh, I'm being the good guy. It's like, no, hey, buddy, let's do this together. Let's figure this out. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome. So I think people underestimate how influential other adults are on your children as well. And we need to be thoughtful about it.
Definitely. No, we are really lucky to have some amazing friends and examples for our kids. I think that is it's just it's just amazing to see like some of our friends grow up, or like my sisters. Like I love having my sisters and my brother-in-laws like around my kids, and making time and space for that is so important. But also just a reminder, when you are a parent, you are an example for the other kids that your kids are around too. Like, I don't want to be the mom that's like, that Kelly girl's always yelling. Like, oh God, you don't want to be that way. But Dan, I've taken so much of your time. You're such an inspiration all the way around, from family life to health and fitness to building businesses and selling them. I think your new book, Buy Back Your Time, is a tool for anyone looking to really start taking control over their schedule, making time for the things they prioritize, and backing it up by looking at their bank account to make sure that they're investing in where they need to be investing. So thank you for sharing your story, for being vulnerable, for putting all of these client stories and personal stories in the book. It makes a big difference. People really can connect with you, and it's been a pleasure to follow along and learn from you along the way. So thanks for spending time with me today. And
Oh, it's an honor. If
yeah,
anybody does read the book, I do want to give this as a special thing for your audience, Kelly. Um, just message me. Instagram's the best way. You can email me at dan@danmartell.com, but Instagram will be the best. And just let me know what part of the book supported you, and to the degree I can be an ally and support you in implementing any of these processes. I've got templates, rhythms. I'll just send it over. But I really, more than anything, I just want to see people buy back their time so that they have the space to become the person that I think at the end of the day, I think everybody here on earth should do two things: become the best version of themselves and then share that person with the world. And
definitely.
you can't do that if you don't have the time to become that best version.
Right. So good. Well, where can people follow along on Instagram and on social media so that they can get in contact with you?
Yeah, for the book, I highly recommend go to buybackyourtime.com. That's where you can link out to all the different retailers. There's an audio version that I read myself with bonus chapters, and it's on Amazon, and all your in-person retailers have books as well. It was actually a #2 Wall Street Journal, right behind Atomic Habits. So James, congrats, but I'm coming for you still. And then Instagram's Dan Martell, 2 L's of Martell on all platforms, my YouTube, my LinkedIn, but Instagram's the one where I spend the most time, just because it's a lot of fun to see. I get to see what other people are doing when they message me and just kind of add to their life. And but yeah, I'm on all socials, and I'm just grateful. I appreciate it, Kelly.
Yeah, we'll put links to everything in the show notes. You guys take a listen to this episode, like it, share it with your friends, go follow Dan on Instagram and read the book, Buy Back Your Time. Thanks, Dan.
Cheers.